All right, let's talk about something you probably don't think about every day. International trade, high-stakes politics, and garbage. Yep, you heard that right. Garbage. It turns out there's this massive, and I mean massive, system moving millions of tons of trash across the US-Canada border. And the crazy part? The whole thing is built on a foundation so fragile, it's about to trigger a full-blown crisis. So let's just start with a number to put this whole thing into perspective. Every single year, the province of Ontario sends 3.44 million tons of trash across the border to be buried in the United States. That's about 27%, more than a quarter of all the waste Ontario even generates. And here's the real kicker. This entire multi-million-ton operation, this absolutely essential escape valve for one of North America's biggest population centers, it's all protected by one single, fragile little loophole in a trade agreement. If that loophole closes, we're not just talking about a garbage problem anymore. We are talking about a potential bi-national crisis. So how in the world did we get here, right? Why is more than a quarter of all of Ontario's trash heading south? Let's dig into the surprisingly simple economics of this great garbage trade. You know, the core issue is actually remarkably simple. On one side, you've got Ontario, and they are just running out of landfill space fast. On the other side, you've got Michigan, which offers some of the absolute cheapest landfill fees, they call them tipping fees, in the entire region. It's really just a simple case of a very big problem meeting a very cheap solution. Okay, so this is where the story starts to get really interesting, where it gets into geopolitics. In an era where we're seeing escalating trade tensions with huge tariffs on most Canadian goods, how is it possible that millions of tons of garbage just cruise across the border for free? Well, it all comes down to a tariff-proof loophole. Just look at this contrast. Right now, the U.S. has a 35% tariff on most Canadian imports, but municipal solid waste, it just flows right into Michigan, completely tariff-free. And you gotta understand, this isn't some accident or oversight, it's written into the rules by design. So that leads us to the big question, doesn't it? In a world of trade wars and protectionism, why on earth does garbage get a free pass? Well, the answer is buried in the legal language of the USMCA trade deal, the successor to NAFTA. The deal classifies municipal waste as an originating good. Basically, because it's considered wholly obtained or produced in Canada, it's treated like it's a Canadian domestic product, not a foreign import. And because of that, it's totally shielded from those heavy 35% tariffs. But here's the thing. That protection is looking less and less certain. So let's move on to the two major threats that are starting to show some serious cracks in this fragile system, putting this whole arrangement at risk. First, let's go back to the money. I mean, this chart just screams bargain, right? Michigan's tipping fee is an unbelievable 36 cents per ton. 36 cents? Compare that to Ohio at almost $5 or Wisconsin at $13. It's no wonder Michigan has become, quite literally, a trash magnet for the entire region. And listen, Michigan's government is well aware of this. Back in 2025, there was this major push to raise that fee all the way up to $5 per ton. The goal was pretty simple. Stop being the cheapest dump around, and hey, maybe generate some much-needed cash for environmental projects. But it didn't happen. The whole proposal just died in October 2025. It got caught up in political infighting and a legislative stalemate. So for the time being, that powerful economic reason for Ontario to keep shipping its trash to Michigan, it's still firmly in place. So with that cheap price locked in, a second kind of more sneaky risk has popped up, the mixed load risk. Think about it. Municipal trash is never pure, right? A garbage truck from Toronto is full of Canadian waste, sure, but it's also got stuff made outside North America, imported plastic packaging, old clothes, broken electronics that were originally made in Asia. And those little foreign-made items, they could trigger this number, a 40% transshipment penalty. This is a massive, massive penalty that could be slapped not just on the foreign item itself, but on the entire value of the truckload. Now, to be clear, this rule isn't actually aimed at garbage. It's designed to stop other countries from trying to sneak goods through Canada to dodge U.S. duties. But because it's practically impossible to prove where every single crushed-up item in a garbage truck came from, the haulers are at a super high risk of what's being called accidental assessment. One wrong item, and boom, a crippling fine. So what do we have? We've got a cheap but unstable destination on one hand, and a new, unpredictable financial risk on the other. And it's all building to an ultimate deadline for Ontario,
what people are starting to call the 2026 landfill cliff.
This timeline really lays it all out. In October 2025, Michigan's fee hike failed, which kept the door wide open. But the big one, the one everyone is watching, is July 1st, 2026. That's when the USMCA is up for a mandatory review, and that originating good loophole that protects Canadian trash, it's squarely on the chopping block. If it gets cut, that 35% tariff could kick in overnight, basically slamming the border shut to waste. And the stakes for Ontario here are just immense. As things stand, with the U.S. border open, the province has until about 2037 before its own landfills are completely full. But if that border closes, that date jumps forward 3 whole years to 2034. They would lose 3 critical years of capacity, basically in the blink of an eye. Let's be really clear. This isn't just about garbage trucks and tipping fees anymore. We are talking about a single sentence in a trade agreement that, if it gets changed, could trigger a genuine waste management emergency for millions and millions of people in Ontario. The domino effect would be enormous. So this is where we land. We have a system that is incredibly fragile, built on a single legal loophole. We have growing risks from both local politics and federal penalties. And we have a hard deadline just around the corner. It really leaves us with a pretty unbelievable question. In a world of complex geopolitics, could the next great trade war really, truly start over garbage?